Hi, George Durkee, the GIS instructor for the Yosemite Ranger Division, and in this video I want to go over a couple of methods to download your GPS devices that you can use during patrols or waypoints or even following search and rescue or something like that. And there are two ways to download it. One is just plugging it in as with any USB device and reading it as a additional drive. And the second way is to use a utility that adds some extra functions called DNRGPS. And I'll show you both of them here. The first way is just plug in your GPS, and it'll take a second or so here. I've plugged it into the USB directly on my computer. Sometimes if you have a hub USB such that you've got a wire and a bunch of USB hubs on it, sometimes that doesn't work. I think there's not enough power to feed the connection to the GPS. But the first thing that you get as it reads the device, and as I said, you get two windows. Here's the second one here. That's not the one you need. You need the window that shows both Garmin and documents. Double click on Garmin and you get current, or I'm sorry, go to GPX, and GPX is the GPS file exchange format, which is the standardized file type now for most GPSs. If you don't have a Garmin, there are other proprietary file types, and you will have gotten a utility for that specific device, and you can almost certainly convert to GPX. And also DNRGPS has a whole bunch of utilities that come in the zip file that allow you to do that. Anyway, double click on that, and then you have all the files. And one thing I forgot to do here was show you how to get DNRGPS. So you search for DNRGPS on Google or whatever, and it'll be a zip file at the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, which is where the DNR comes from, and download the latest version, which is for ArcMap 10.2. And there's a number of things you can do with this utility. Anyway, just unzip it on your desktop, but it can create a shapefile, which is the geospatial standard for ArcGIS products, map software, and it's an SHP extension, and I'll show you that in just a second here. But of course, you can also save it as GPX, and it allows you to customize what you download. And so let's go to that. I'll start DNR GPS, which I keep as a icon on my toolbar. Don't know what that was, but let's hope everything works. And so then, in my case, it showed the Garmin eTrex as already connected. But if you don't have a line there showing that a GPS is connected, go to GPS and find GPS, and you should get, if you have a current driver version, it'll show you what you have connected. And the other thing you want to do is go to File and Set Projection. And for Yosemite and Sequoia Kings, really all of central to Southern California, you want to use UTM Zone 11N with a datum of WGS 84 or NAD 83. Both are fine. And just OK that, and that allows the software when you create a shapefile to apply the correct projection. And then go ahead and go to GPS and download all, and then you get a dialog for current GPX, which is your current track log file. And the other thing you want to pay attention to is waypoints on this model are a separate file. I think when you go to download all, it'll download both waypoints and your track log file. But these two you have to download separately. So first we're going to download the current GPX, and this assumes you followed the protocol of saving your current track log and clearing the track log before you start a day's patrol. And it's not super critical if you forget to do that. Just download everything, and if you're sending it to me, I will clean it up. But this also allows you to clean it up on your own. So download current GPX, and you'll see that in this case it downloaded 36 individual points from a little walk I just did to help illustrate. And notice that both on the left and the right you have a time and date stamp. So for instance, if you have not cleared your track logs day to day, and you just want to download a particular day, what you can do is highlight the first date of the track that you want to download and go down to the end of the date before it changes to the next day or a few days later or whatever, and then hold down the Shift key and then select all of those. And so then you're just downloading the one day. And you can do that obviously for any day, or if you haven't used the GPS in quite a long time, that helps. But as I said, if you're using this for your patrol logs and you don't have time or it's too confusing, don't worry about it. I can clean it up later. Then you also, while you're here, want to download your waypoints. And again, you go to waypoint, go to download, and waypoints are kept in a specific waypoint file for the date. So we're going to look here for June, July. I know it's in here. There we go. July 7th, July 6th is when I did this. So it's a separate file for waypoints, which can get a little confusing. And then OK, and it downloaded 4 waypoints. So then to save this as a shapefile so it's immediately available to ArcGIS 10, you go to File, Save to, ArcMap, and File. And you have a whole bunch of file types that you can save it to, so shapefile 2D, but of course you can also save it as a GPX, which is one of your choices here, GPS exchange format, and you can highlight that if you just want to send the raw GPX file of individual points. So when you do it as a shapefile, make sure that you have created a folder, ideally on your desktop, but wherever it's convenient. I created one called Yosemite GPS data, and that'll hold all my GPS data from Yosemite. And we want to follow a standard naming convention so it correctly identifies what's in the file. And I'll hand all this stuff out as a separate handout later, but in this case you want to do the date, so 2017, 06, and 07. And then you want to put where you create, or what it's a track log of. So let's say Tuolumne Meadows, so just put in TM and your name and first initial. And I use underscores because I'm old-fashioned DOS-based guy. and it makes sure it runs on most machines, although I don't think that's important anymore. Anyway, and then whether it is a tracks or waypoints. So if it's tracks, TRK is your extension, is your designation. For waypoints, it'll be WPT. And then save. And your next dialog is whether you want to save it as points or lines or several other types of shapes. Save it as lines. If you save it as GPX, if you're just saving the GPX file, you'll get the points anyway. And sometimes it's useful to save the points also as a shapefile, in which case you just click on points. But what the line does is it goes in timestamp order and puts a line between each point and goes point to point all the way down in that logical order. The slight problem there is if, say, on day 1 you create a track log, and then on day 2 you move to a different area and you haven't cleared and saved the previous day's track log, then there will be a line from the last point of day 1 to the first point of day 2. So when you project it, you get this confusing line. Easy to clean up using ARC10, and don't worry too much, but that's one of the reasons we ask to clear or save and clear your track logs day to day. On a search, that becomes a little more important because all the extra lines kind of confuse the search, and we have to clean them up, which when a zillion things are happening takes a little more time. But again, your job is just to get this stuff to me and with as little hassle as possible. So there's your priority. Anyway, hit OK, and there you go. It's created it. Now let's do the same for the waypoints, and we'll save it to a shapefile again. And we'll give it the same name, and so I just highlighted the other name I created to automatically fill in the name. And we'll give it WPT for waypoint and save. There we go. And so let's go to the data. One thing when you create a shapefile is that a shapefile versus a GPX file. GPX is just going to be one file, and a shapefile is made up of 4 different individual files. When you look at it in ARC10, it shows as just one file, but when you look at it in the Windows Explorer, you see every individual file. And that makes a difference if you're going to use the Yosemite's web map, which you get to by going to the SharePoint to GIS, and then open up the default viewer. There will also be a law enforcement viewer, which will keep any data you enter confined to LE rangers, and there'll also be a fire one, same thing. And then you go to add shapefile, so you can add your own shapefiles, and it doesn't identify apparently a single SHP file. It'll show you all the files. You have to make sure to highlight them all and then import them using the Add Shapefile feature. That you won't see that in ARC10, any ARC10 software, but I haven't used this that much yet, so I can't give you instructions on it yet since my computer is belly up. So then the other thing you can do is within Yosemite GP, or I'm sorry, within your GPX folder, when you've connected your GPS device, and you go to the current folder and you just copy current and drag it or copy it to Yosemite GPS data, and again give it a name such that 2017 07 or 06, sorry about that, 06 07, and we'll just call this Durkee G as a GPX file. And you'll do the same for waypoints. This is the track, so TRK, and copy over the straight track file. And then, you know, every week or two, depending on how many patrols you do, right-click, and a couple of you in training sessions have said you're not clear necessarily on how to do a zip file. So if you have a number of files, and let's go back here, notice that under GPX you have all your old saved track files. So, you know, each day if you've saved and cleared your old track files, it'll save it with a date stamp. And what you'll want to do is put them, as I said, into your GPS data folder, and then highlight everything and create a zip file. In this case, I use iZark, which is another utility, and just add it to Yosemite GPS data zip file. And it wouldn't add one, that's fine. It's this lock file, which is causing me some problems. Don't worry about it. Anyway, so you've created a zip file, and just email that to me. On the handout, I will have my email address, and then I will start projecting all that stuff onto maps for the district ranger and chief ranger to look at and use however they want to use it. And you guys too, using the web viewer, can also keep track of your files as you go. Also, on waypoints, we're just putting together a draft protocol for doing this, and again, I'll send it out in written form. But at the moment, we're thinking that when you're out on patrol, you can just create a waypoint for an educational visitor contact. That is, non-law enforcement. It's not a warning, it's not a citation, you're just meeting somebody on the trail. And that way we can get an idea of how many folks you're actually contacting out there and where they are. And that might help with planning, and might help justify making sure that rangers get out there and educating people, so on and so forth. It might not, and so we may drop that if it becomes too much of a hassle for you folks. And then you might also want to use the waypoint function to record other important individual locations while you're on your patrol. So for instance, if you run across an archaeological site or a trash dump you can't clean up right there and you need to get back to, or you suspect somewhere there's a poacher camp or a fence down or anything like that. Anyway, you just record a waypoint there and keep a notebook so that you can either write down in the notebook the default name that's assigned to your waypoint and then put a note on why you recorded that point, or you can change the name just to at least start classifying those waypoints. So for an archaeological site, you know, give it ARCH 001 or trash 001 or whatever. And we'll start thinking about that more. A lot of that depends on how you guys want to use your GPSs in the field. And for years as a backcountry ranger, I kept track of individual wildlife sightings using exact GPS locations and ARC sites and all that sort of thing. So you can actually fit it into your work routine. And as I said, depending on how often you're on patrols, say every week or two, or even 3, whatever works out, download your GPS onto a common folder and zip them and send them to me, and use the standardized file name so that we know what's in it, and can identify who sent them. Okay, well, I hope that's helpful. Be sure to contact me or contact me through Ansley in the Chief Ranger's office if you folks have any questions. If you want to learn more advanced software like ARC10 or ArcGIS Explorer, I'm happy to teach that to you. Here, I'll give you a quick, here's Arc Explorer. And the nice thing about Explorer is that you can just drag a GPX file straight into it. And you get a little dialog here. It's going to be tracks. We want them to draw the individual points of that track and then attach it to the surface. And so you'll notice that each individual point connected by a line was drawn. Another interesting thing here is that when I hadn't turned this GPS on in quite a while, and so all of these points here are incorrect. I was right here, and so as it was zeroing in, your initial points as shown on the GPS, you'll show the confidence in feet. So I was probably, as the GPS was trying to figure out where it was probably showing an error of a couple hundred feet. It's recording those points, but I wasn't there. Either that or it might have been reflecting off a car or a metal roof or something like that, and so I was getting multipath. In any event, that's one thing to watch out for, and sometimes it's obvious. In this case, it's actually not obvious. That's not a illogical route for me. And same with ARC10. You can pull in I'm looking for my desktop here. Oh, there it is, desktop and Yosemite GIS. So you can pull in both your waypoints, which remember I did as a shapefile, and you want to change the symbology a little bit to make it more obvious. We'll just take the first, we'll take our big red dot, and then pull in the track. ArcGIS 10 won't pull in GPX straight out. You have to convert it to a shapefile. So let's look for a GPS symbol here. There's a nice one. There you go. Okay, that'll do it for this session. So I hope this helps, and remember to contact me, and between Ansley and I, we'll help you guys however we can. If you have suggestions on how you want to do this on your patrols, be sure to make suggestions on how to make things easier for you. Okay, thanks a lot.